guys, Johnny Dupre here with your Charisma Coach. Now, I've been sort of following you guys on Facebook, looking at your threads, your forum, sort of the forum posts and the comments that you guys have been posting up. And I wanted to do a video to sort of follow up and see if I couldn't cover some of the sticking points that you guys find yourselves running into after the boot camp intensive that Marcus and I did with you guys in London. So some of the things that I actually noticed that you guys were running into are some common problems that aren't just found in Charisma, but are found in a lot of the everyday problems I run into with my clients. As a result, I really have done some research and have looked around and really found what I think is a fabulous motivation, a series of exercises, and a strategy and a protocol that will help you guys to really get engaged with your motivation for why you're interested in studying Charisma in the first place, to really get you guys out there and engaging in conversations with people that are around you in your day-to-day lives, separate from, of course, the social situations that you guys are normally finding yourselves in, so that you get a chance to practice some of the skill sets that Marcus and I imparted to you guys when we were in London. So I would like to start by giving credit to a fabulous trainer and an amazing friend of mine, my dear friend Ramon David, who is a high-performance specialist and an international kettlebell instructor from Australia who teaches all over the world. I've taken sort of his series of exercises and strategy and have adopted it and adapted it for you guys in order for you guys to get the most, really the best and most incredible technology around how to create a really solid unconscious and conscious motivation within you. So if you haven't taken an opportunity right now, go ahead and grab yourself a piece of paper and a pen and get yourself ready to write down a series of questions that when you ask them to yourselves and really engage with the questions one by one in order over time, you'll find yourself naturally becoming more and more motivated with the stuff that you're doing in your day-to-day life, not just with Charisma, but you actually might find it useful in all other areas of your life as well. So probably by now you have your piece of paper and your pen, so let's get right down into it. The first question I always ask myself when I'm trying to get myself motivated to go and do something is, what am I actually doing? Most of the time in life when I'm working with my clients, especially the ones who have motivation problems or are experiencing problems with procrastination around doing something that they know would be good for their life and good for really their intentions, is that they don't actually know what specifically they're supposed to be doing. So if you're sitting on a park bench and you're just sort of enjoying, sort of 10 or 15 minute break, and you look over and you see someone that you might be interested in, a lot of times we start to build these mental movies in our head of all of these different things that we could be doing, but we actually don't ask ourselves this first question to get the task down that we're actually intending on doing in the first place. So the first question I always ask myself is, what am I actually doing? Sometimes it's just, I'm going to walk up and say hello. But what I'm actually doing is walking up and saying hello. I'm not paying attention to what I think or what I assume or what my opinion might be around what I think their response is going to be or anything like that. I literally just attend to, what am I specifically and actually doing? Okay, when I actually figure that out, it makes it much easier for me to move on to the next questions in this protocol. So take a second right now to consider a specific situation that you found yourself in, and maybe over the last week, and ask yourself what you could have actually done. What specifically thing could I actually have been doing? Okay? Now, the second question I always ask myself is, why am I going to be doing this thing specifically? So why am I doing this specifically? What this does is this really uncovers and opens up our motivation for the reason why we would be doing this thing in the first place. Sometimes it can be as easy or as simple as, I'm going to learn. Or my ultimate goal, why am I doing this, is because I want to meet that person and potentially create a connection. Or I want to get to know some of the colleagues that I work with at my work a little bit more. Or I want to build a deeper connection or open up the potential opportunity for me to receive a potential promotion. Or maybe just meet a girl and maybe get a date. It doesn't matter what your ultimate goal is, but you do have to ask yourself that question of, why am I doing this thing specifically? Make sure that you take an opportunity to actually connect with, on an emotional level, why you're doing whatever this action is that you plan on doing. Now, we move on to question number 3, which actually helps us to get our intention. And the third question is, what am I going to be getting out of this? So now that you've established sort of what you're actually doing on a task level, and you figured out why you're actually going to be doing this specifically, now you have to ask yourself, what's the result that I'm ultimately trying to get out of doing this thing? You're connecting sort of this immediate moment or this task or this thing you're going to be actually doing with whatever lesson or exercise it may be in charisma with sort of a bigger picture or a greater picture for what your ultimate intention is around charisma in connection to you. Okay? Take an opportunity right now to consider that same situation and ask yourself what you would ultimately be getting out of it by doing these exercises or by walking up and starting this conversation. You'll find yourself building a natural, deeper motivation in connection to a bigger picture with why you specifically went after learning charisma in the first place. That takes us to question number 4. Question number 4 I often ask myself is, what can I enjoy about or within this process? So oftentimes, even if I know exactly what I'm doing and I know why I'm doing it, and I've even connected it to the bigger picture, oftentimes we get afraid or we develop these feelings inside of us of dread. Like, I'm going to dread doing this process right now, even though it's going to lead me to something so much better. Even though it's connected me to a motivation that I do want for my life, because you're sort of in fear or you're feeling or experiencing an emotion in the moment, it sort of can make it more difficult for you to want to move forward into the much bigger picture in your life. Okay, when you ask yourself, what can I enjoy about or within this process? Now all of a sudden you're asking yourself the right type of question to connect you to a different emotion that's other than fear or anxiety or maybe depression or sadness or any other of the states that you guys might find yourself feeling. So really this fourth question is a really, really important one. So make sure that you take time before doing anything around charisma to ask yourself, what can I enjoy about or within this process? Now that leads us to the 5th and final question is, once I've really figured out the task that I'm actually going to be doing, walking up and saying hello, or practicing emotional spiking, or practicing giving a justification for my question, or just playing with different techniques or different technologies, then you move on to, why am I doing this specifically? And maybe for you that might be an intrinsic motivation, or it could be extrinsic, like you have a desire to maybe increase your revenue, how much money you're making in your life. Then 3, you say, what am I going to ultimately get out of this in the end? Which is, once I have more money, what's that money going to afford me or going to get me ultimately in my life that's going to help me really to want to move forward in a specific direction? Okay? And that leads us to question 4 is, what can I enjoy about or within this process? Which is, maybe I can enjoy the look on their face when I shock and surprise them doing a wind-up. So walking up and jumping into their conversation and going, hey, how you doing? Maybe doing that is, the look on their face may be enough for you to enjoy the process of actually playing with this technique as sort of a single event for you. And the 5th and final question you ask yourself is, what is my next smallest step? Which means, like, if I'm sitting here and I've gone through all of these questions, then my next smallest step might be to stand up and to begin walking over. Okay? So oftentimes we begin to paint these pictures and these mental movies in our head of all these things that could happen, and as a result we never actually get to the one single step that would allow us to start that whole thing in motion. And as a result, we might end up in a state of overwhelm, because we're painting the picture so big that we lose track of really what the next smallest step is. So my challenge to you is, when you actually consider the next smallest step, is to consider how you're feeling in that moment when you ask that question. Okay? If you ask yourself the question, what's my next smallest step, and you feel anything other than complete ease, that step you picked isn't small enough. You're still making it too big. You're still making it too much. And when you find yourself taking that next smallest step easily and effortlessly, the next smallest step that comes immediately after that becomes that much easier too, and you begin to develop a sort of unconscious momentum, which allows you to start the conversation and get what you need, not only in the moment out of enjoying the process within it, but also what you're going to ultimately learn about and connect to a future goal. This process, I can't tell you, has changed my life, literally. When it comes not just to charisma, but when it comes to doing projects, when it comes to, doing things that normally most of the time would be boring or lame, I find myself naturally being motivated into doing it easily and effortlessly just because I go through this entire protocol. So once again, let's just go through the 5 questions really quick. The first one is, what am I actually doing? Okay, the second question is, why am I doing this specifically? The third question is, what am I going to be getting out of this ultimately? The fourth question is, what can I enjoy about or within this process? And the fifth and final question is, what's my next smallest step? When you find yourself doing all of these steps often, practicing them regularly with everything you want to be doing in your life, then you're going to notice yourself changing almost overnight. You're going to find yourself in each moment developing a new sense of momentum with you, which of course provides for you positive evidence that you've achieved through creative experimentation, which you guys know from the boot camp stands for peace. So all of a sudden you have this new sense or peace of mind inside of you, which helps you with everything you'll end up doing in your day-to-day living. Now, on the first day of the boot camp, I had an opportunity to give you guys one of my favorite quotes by Theodore Roosevelt. And I only really sort of gave you the beginning of the quote, and I want to take this opportunity to read the whole quote to you so that you can really take a moment to sort of let yourself contemplate this even more fully when it comes to who you're being in your life and allow it to change not just who you thought you were, but who you know you can be being soon. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who, at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while doing something greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Go out and enjoy the arena, gentlemen. And if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me a private message anytime. Good luck. I salute you.